Hey folks, this is Kalani. We have some huge nerfs coming through with the next weekly reset. In fact, these might be some of the largest nerfs we've ever seen to a raid or to a specific raid encounter. We've got up to 90% nerfs in some cases, which really begs the question of why such heavy nerfs are even required in the first place, and why this raid in particular has been nerfed so heavily and so often. In addition to that, we also have some little updates for Dragonflight and some hints as to when Alpha might finally start up. So let's see what's been going on and break it all down. Before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. First up this week, we have some massive, and I mean massive nerfs coming in for the Sepulchre of the First One's raid. I know what you're probably thinking, didn't we already get those nerfs? Didn't we hear about this recently? Yes, you probably did, and we have even more to pile on top of those nerfs. All of these nerfs will go live with the next weekly reset, so you should have a much easier time with this week's raid when compared to last week. Most of these nerfs are targeted at the later half of the raid. For starters, Lehuvim has had his health reduced by 15% on Mythic difficulty. That's going to speed up the fight as a whole quite considerably, but in addition to that, Resonance Cascade's damage has been reduced by 90% on Mythic. I don't remember the last time we saw such a huge nerf. 90% reduction? That's almost getting rid of the ability or mechanic entirely. If something deals 90% less damage, do you even really have to worry about it anymore? Is that even a mechanic at that point? That's going to be a hilarious thing to find out for next week's Mythic Raiders. And then in addition to those nerfs, they also increased the cooldown of Guardian Automa's Form Sentry ability on Mythic difficulty, so Lehuvim in general got nerfed quite significantly. Moving on, Halondra saw some pretty hefty nerfs yet again. Aftershock's damage was reduced by 75% on Mythic difficulty. Again, what a crazy nerf. It's almost like these Mythic abilities were just too much on top of everything else that was added for the Mythic fight. A 75% reduction is insane for any ability, and it makes it considerably easier to deal with in almost every case. Alongside that nerf, Planet Cracker Beam has also been neutered. Its damage is reduced by 65% and its damage occurs less often on Mythic difficulty, so overall it's just going to be less punishing as an ability. Anduin also made the nerf list this week yet again, and what a round of nerfs. To start with, Hopelessness and Overconfidence's durations were increased to 16 seconds up from 12. That's going to give you 4 extra seconds to deal with and let your raiders slow down and ensure they clear debuffs properly. In addition to that, Blasphemy will no longer be triggered when coming into contact with an unmarked player on Mythic difficulty. This is an absolutely huge change for Mythic. One of the largest changes going from Heroic Anduin to Mythic Anduin was the fact that you couldn't step on anyone if they didn't have the opposite debuff. Running into an unmarked player was just as bad as running into the wrong debuff, but that's going to change going forward, giving you way more space and freedom to move around to clear debuffs faster. In addition to that, March of the Damned's damage was reduced by 75% on all difficulties, another ability getting absolutely blasted, so touching those walking walls of undeath will be less punishing overall. Soul Explosion's damage and travel speed was reduced by 30% on all difficulties, Banished Soul cast time was increased to 16 seconds on Mythic difficulty, and Necrotic Detonation cast time was increased by 30% on Mythic difficulty. With all of these nerfs in play, Anduin is going to be a very different fight and much easier going forward. I think Anduin might actually become the most nerfed raid encounter that we've ever seen in World of Warcraft. The fight has had so many nerfs and they've been so big that the difference between the boss that the world first raiders killed and what people are killing right now, it's almost a completely different boss. That's how much Anduin has been nerfed since the time this raid first came out. Rygalon is up next with a few Mythic-only nerfs. Dark Eclipse now targets 3 players on Mythic, down from 4. That's almost a 25% nerf, I guess, dropping 1 debuff target entirely. And then the Unstable Matter health was reduced by 25% on Mythic difficulty, so nuking those down should be easier as well. And then the Jailer has been hit with a huge nerf bat as well, both for Mythic mechanics but also just in general. The Jailer's melee damage was reduced by 25% on all difficulties, Torment damage was reduced by 30% on all difficulties, and Unholy Eruption damage was reduced by 30% on all difficulties. So less damage throughout the entire fight for every difficulty of the Jailer. That's going to make it much easier for getting your normal kills, your AOTC kills, and even your Mythic kills. It doesn't stop there though. For Mythic difficulty, Rune of Compulsion Absorb reduced by 30%, Chainbreaker now targets the nearest 3 allies down from 4, Incarnation of Torment health reduced by 20%, Diverted Life Shield reduced by 75%, and Chains of Anguish will no longer reposition linked targets when the primary target moves out of range. So lots of nerfs to some key abilities, especially the Life Shield. From what I understand, that was being cheesed in a very specific way, so the 75% reduction will hopefully either make that cheese unnecessary or just make it less effective, meaning you shouldn't have to expressly plan for it and your run won't immediately die if you happen to fail to set it up properly. So lots of nerfs for many of the harder bosses in the raid, and even though the vast majority are for Mythic, there were also some very big nerfs for other difficulties as well. But the most interesting thing about these nerfs to me is the sheer number of them, how significant they are, and how quickly they are happening. We have seen so many nerfs to this raid, and a lot of them have been very big. These nerfs right here are huge for certain bosses. They're going from Mythic bosses in some cases to almost heroic bosses. I mean, when you see damage reductions of 65%, 75%, even 90%, I really don't understand how you get to that point. That's not balancing anymore. That's literally removing obstacles or mechanics or abilities. And to top it all off, these nerfs are happening very quickly and very often. The only reason I can see for all of these nerfs is to increase kill counts in the Sepulchre of the First One's raid before Season 4 rolls around. So with the nerfs getting bigger and happening more often, that probably means we're closer to Season 4, right? We don't have any concrete additional info about the launch date for Season 4, we just have the sometime in summer timeline, but that could be as early as July or as late as September. The way they're ramping up these nerfs though, I have a feeling that Season 4 is probably closer than we think. So if you have any goals or checklists for the game before Season 4 comes out, I would get started on those activities. We have no idea how much of a heads up we're going to get for the new season starting, so don't wait too long if there's something you really want to do. The other thing I want to talk about this week is Dragonflight, and when we might start seeing some movement on that front. We haven't heard a great deal about Dragonflight since the initial reveal and announcement. It's been a bit hush-hush, which means we probably have a huge info dump waiting in the wings. That hasn't stopped a few little updates being thrown our way though. The major update that we got to see recently was the reveal of some talent trees. Talent trees have been completely redone in Dragonflight. We will have one tree for general class stuff and one tree for specialization stuff. So 2 actual talent trees to work through. That all sounds very exciting, but it doesn't really mean much until we know what each of these talent points is actually going to be, what the trees look like, what choices we have, and how many temporary powers are working their way into the talent trees this time. Well, we actually now have a full list of Druid talents and a full list of Death Knight talents. Both the general class tree and each of the spec trees are covered. I'll give you a link in the comments below to each of these posts so you can peruse them at your own leisure. Some interesting points that I feel need to be highlighted are that a lot of base spells are being added into the talent tree, so some abilities that you've always had will actually now be talents instead. In addition to that, some talents are unlocked by default for certain specs, so a feral ability might be moved into the talent tree, but feral druids will have that talent automatically unlocked. That means that you have way more potential and options for hybrid builds and things like that. Everyone will have the choice of picking up various abilities and defensives and utility spells regardless of your spec, which could end up being very interesting. One odd choice here is that your interrupt is actually now a talent choice, almost no matter what class you seem to play. Pretty mandatory talent choice for the vast majority of players. Who's going to play without an interrupt after all, but making it a choice in the first place feels kind of strange. Then there are also a whole bunch of powers brought in from things like Azerite armor, Legion artifacts, Covenant abilities even, legendary effects, you name it. If it's been a borrowed power effect in the past, it has a chance to appear in this new talent tree. Now reading through these lists will give you an idea of what kinds of talents we can expect in Dragonflight, but reading a list doesn't really give you a great feeling of how it's going to progress. Thankfully there are a few tools out there now which mimic a talent tree in game, so I'll give you a link to the talent tree that Wowhead has made as well. Again, it's just for druids and death knights for right now, but you can work your way down the tree, see where each point could go, see how the trees can progress in general, which options you might want to pick up, and generally just play around with it. These talent trees are a big change from what we have in game right now, so it's nice to be able to tinker with it before the changes go live. I assume as more talents are unveiled and as more classes have their talents talked about, we'll see more classes added to these talent tree tools, so we just have to wait for Blizzard to open the floodgates for more information. Now you may be wondering, well, when is this alpha thing finally going to kick off? While we don't have any confirmation or official announcement, I think we're getting close. The alpha was recently pushed to the Battle.net game catalog, which means it's getting ready for us to download it and be able to data mine and play and all that wonderful stuff, but we've also started to see new builds being applied to the alpha. At this point, we're probably just waiting for the game to be in an acceptable playable state for Blizzard to be able to get the testing feedback that they're looking for. So if the game isn't there yet, if it's not ready, what we're looking for is more builds. More builds means more changes, more additions, more things to test, right? So as the builds come in, we're getting closer and closer to the build that's actually going to get released to us. It's also already been 2 months since the Dragonflight announcement and 2 weeks since the game was added to the catalog, so I would fully expect more information in the coming weeks from Blizzard. We might even see some big changes and info drops this week, but I also expect the alpha to at least start, if not being in full swing, in July. I kinda can't believe we're almost in July already for this year, but with the second half of this year arriving, we will most likely see the alpha testing cycle for Dragonflight begin. So, soon, very soon, we'll finally be able to see where the dev team is going with this expansion, what lessons they have learned throughout Shadowlands, and just get a general feel for how it's going to be. It's going to be a very interesting alpha test, that's for sure. But that's all of the nerfs coming to the Sepulchre of the First One's raid with the next reset, and some small updates for the Dragonflight Alpha. What do you think of all these nerfs? Does this mean that Season 4 is right around the corner? When do you think the Dragonflight Alpha will start up, and what are you most excited about for seeing in-game for the first time? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who subscribed on Twitch. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.